Oh my God, guys, honestly. Sometimes I honestly lose hope. I lose hope in humanity. How is it that these people don't get this? I mean, they're so imbecilic. But guys, honestly, I don't understand some of these people. How are they not embarrassed that they post these comments? I think the internet and social media has broken people's brains. If this is the future of humanity, then we're all screwed. Hey guys, it's Alessio. Hope you're well. I just thought I'd make a very quick video for you about some really ridiculous and hilarious comments that I got on my last video, which was, in my view, one of the most important videos that I made recently. So I'm sure you watched that video and I explained what I think is happening here in the stock markets. Now, I should say that some of the comments that I got in that video were fantastic. Let me just read you a couple of them. For example, your videos really inspired me. Great video, great content. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate that. There was a really interesting comment here. It said, I sold most after your video. Thank you so much. Helpful as always. So that was because the March video where Manuel Blay and I mentioned the extreme warning signal that occurred at the time. So I mean, a lot of the comments, guys, were just fantastic. So I want to thank you very much. However, some of the comments, actually just a few of the comments, were just so ridiculous and embarrassing for the people who wrote it. And you might be thinking, well, why am I even making a video talking about it? The thing is, guys, I think that, first of all, I think we can have a good laugh. But I think the second reason I want to make this video is because some people, I think, generally are confused. Maybe just confused about what we said, and they don't understand how the markets and probability works. So let me explain to you what happened here. So some of the comments were saying that even though back in March, so as you may recall, back in March of this year, we put out a video with Manuel Blay, my good friend Manuel Blay and trader. So at this point, we put out a video saying, look, there's a Dow theory bearish signal. Manuel Blay calls this the Dow theory sell signal. And at that point, Manuel decided to sell 50% of his position. Why? Because there was an increasing risk of a further 11% drop in the stock market. In fact, he mentioned this.
Average decline after a Dow theory sell signal is a further 11.22%. So it means that there is still significant, on average, downward price action. So when we had a sell, there is still lots of room for the stock market to fall. Furthermore, more important, the probability of a bear market following a Dow theory sell is 60%. In other words, when you get a sell signal, 60% of the time, it will be followed by a real bear market, the real thing. So this is really a big warning sign.
He said there was a high probability the market could drop by a further 11% from the signal, from the Dow theory sell signal, which is precisely what happened. The market has indeed dropped by 11% or more. Now, I should say, even though most of you understood what he said, there were some rather ignorant comments by people who should know better, who essentially were saying, no, Manuel Blay was playing both sides of the market. He was saying it's going to go up, and he was saying it's going to go down. Okay? So no matter what happens, he can say he was right, or we can say we were right. Guys, this is complete and utter garbage, because those people clearly were not listening. First of all, think about this. Why would Manuel Blay choose to sell, exit 50% of his position right here if he actually thought the market was going to go immediately higher to new highs? Why would anyone do that? Manuel explained the reason. In fact, I'll play for you the clip. As you will see, I put the very same question which I thought was going to come in the comment section. I put that to Manuel and I asked him myself, then why did you, for example, sell 50% of your stock market holdings? And why did you pay attention to the Dow theory sell signal? So some people may scratch their heads and say, this doesn't make sense. Could you explain that point?
There is a likelihood that the market drops still 6-7% more. I don't know, maybe stops now. I don't have an idea, but I live by probability. So the probability is that the stock market will fall a further 11%. And this is the probability. Some trades go sour, but most trades don't go sour. So it means that I have the possibility of re-entry at a lower price. So I'm exiting here, but most likely, on average, I will buy lower. And this is how you make money when you're a trader.
All right, guys, so you heard what Manuel Blay said. He said the reason why he sold 50% of his position at that very point, at the Dow theory bearish signal or Dow theory sell signal, was because of an increasing risk. Again, as a trader, as investors, we look at probabilities. There was an increasing risk of a further drop. Again, as we know, Manuel Blay mentioned this back in March. The average drop after a Dow theory bearish signal is a further 11%. And that is exactly what we got. So why not? It makes perfect sense for a trader to exit 50%, take some profits at this point when the Dow theory bearish signal occurs, and avoid the big drop. Again, whether it could be 5%, 7%, 11%, avoid this big drop, and instead buy at lower prices. So in other words, re-enter at much lower prices. I should say that Manuel Blay has not said as yet that he's going to re-enter at this particular point. What he's waiting for is capitulation. So Manuel is not saying he's going to buy or enter the market right now. He's waiting to see if we get capitulation, because a capitulation signal, if it occurs, would be bullish. Okay, so we haven't got that just yet. And again, go ahead and read Manuel Blay's newsletter for more details about capitulation. Now, it is true that Manuel Blay, in that video back in March, was bullish for the next several months going to June and July. In other words, to the end of the summer period and perhaps going into the September period. But again, that's a different time frame. So I even said this to Manuel Blay. I said, some people are going to say, you're saying it's going to go up, you're saying it's going to go down. Clearly, I was anticipating the kind of ridiculous comments. In fact, let me play it for you right here. Often I get comments on my videos, people say, oh, you guys are saying it's going to go up and it's going to go down. So no matter what happens, you can say you're right, which is a very childish and immature comment, very silly.
Time frame.
Time frames. Yeah, exactly. They just ignore what we're saying. They ignore the context and the time frame we're talking about. Yeah, guys, as you heard, people just ignore the time frame and the context when we're talking about the markets. So when we're talking about probabilities, again, there's a difference between the short term and the longer term. So short term, in the next several weeks, we could have a bearish point of view for the market to drop, let's say, by 5, 7 to 11%, like it has done. But the longer term, we could still be bullish for the market to recover and potentially make new highs. Now we'll see if we get capitulation, and if we do, that could be indeed a likely factor, a likelihood for the market. We haven't got capitulation just yet at the present moment. But indeed, that is exactly what happened in the year 2020. In the year 2020, we had a very sharp, very quick drop, as we saw that year, and then a quick recovery after the next several months. The next several months, the market recovered to make new highs. So there's nothing wrong with being bearish or negative on the markets, expecting a drop in the short term for the next several weeks, okay, and then having a longer term bullish view for the next several months, going to the middle of this year or going perhaps to the end of this year. So you can actually believe in both of those things. Again, time frame, context is very important. So that's the first thing. Again, I want to say to those people who posted those ignorant comments, aren't you embarrassed? Can you not see the difference between the time frames when people are talking about probabilities? The second thing I want to talk about is some childish comments that I got on my own video, because, and this is the most ridiculous thing. So I said, look, there is still risk of potential more downside, especially if the market falls below this level here, okay, that would signal a bear market. So I said, let's wait and see what happens in the next few days and weeks, because if we see a break of this support level at 49.53, on the S&P, that could signal a bear market, because that would be breaking key support levels, especially if the Dow Jones also confirms that. Okay. Now, of course, in my recent video, go ahead and watch that. I said that if we get capitulation in combination with a bear market, then the bear market signal would be made invalid, it would be canceled out, and instead the capitulation signal would win. So I've explained all of that in my previous video. Go ahead and watch that. But here's the thing. Most people clearly do not understand how the markets work or how probabilities work. Because what I said was in the video was, look, we could see a bounce. We might see a bounce and we might fill this gap right about here. Okay? You see these gaps on the chart? Markets often come back and fill gaps. There's a gap right there. There's a gap right there. Okay, on the chart, the S&P. And I said, look, in the next bounce that might occur, the next bounce or reversion to the mean or relief rally, whatever you want to call it, that bounce could very well come back up and fill these gaps on the chart, especially gap downs. Okay, that's what I said in the previous video. And you know what the comments were? The comments were, oh, Alessio says the market's going to go up and the market's going to go down. So no matter what happens, he can say he's right. Oh my God, guys, honestly, sometimes I honestly lose hope. I lose hope in humanity when I read these awful, ridiculous, pathetic, uneducated, stupid, ignorant, imbecilic comments. Honestly, guys, I don't know what to do with people who think like that. Let me just say to those people who wrote those comments, do you think that the market only moves in one direction? I mean, aren't you embarrassed? Do you think the market can only go down? So if the market's going down, it can only go down. It cannot possibly bounce back, no? So, for example, if we get capitulation, let me just put it this way. If we get capitulation in the next few days and weeks, right? So let's say the market continues to push further lower and we get a capitulation signal. Okay, again, we've explained capitulation in much more detail in a previous video. So if we get capitulation, don't you think the market will probably bounce and rally very strongly back? And that bounce may very well come back and fill these gaps. Yeah? I mean, we know the market does not move in one direction. Yes, for now it's moving down. And yes, it might come down and test these levels. It might even break these levels. Yes. But so what? If we get capitulation, if we get a strong dead cat bounce, then that bounce, the rally, could very well come back and fill these gaps. How is it that these people don't get this? I mean, they're so imbecilic. They're so pathetic and ignorant. They prefer to post a comment on YouTube to apparently sound cute and funny, and so they get likes on the comments. And woe. All I can say is woe to those people who like those ridiculous comments. Unfortunately, there are people as ignorant as they are who do that. But guys, honestly, I don't understand some of these people. How are they not embarrassed that they post these comments? Honestly, I don't get it. But I mean, to me, it's perfectly understandable. The two things could easily happen. There's nothing wrong with believing both of those things. That the market could drop and capitulate, and yes, we could have a strong bounce. We can understand and appreciate both of those things. But unfortunately, guys, I think the internet and social media has broken people's brains. They don't understand that things are not black and white. Things are not either going down or going up. Things are not definitely bad or definitely good. It's gray, okay? There's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of conflict in the markets where you have to appreciate probabilities. How is it that these ignorant people out there don't understand it? I think it's because people have been so brainwashed by social media to believe that there's only one possibility, that you only have to believe in one thing, either going down or going up. You cannot appreciate nuance. If this is the future of humanity, then we're all screwed. Anyway, guys, thanks very much for watching. I appreciate it. I hope to see you guys in the next video update. Cheers.